I am so tired right now, but I've been putting off filming this for a while, and I even put on makeup, so, well, it's not really makeup, it's just eyeliner. So, we are doing this. Hi, I'm Katie. I make videos sometimes when I feel like it and when I have time. And today we are talking about tips on how you can write your first novel. And you're probably thinking like, what? Who's this like child trying to tell me, give me advice on how to write books? Well, for your information, I wrote this. Here's my name. That's my face right there. I took this picture when I was in the 9th grade. Ew. Okay, so yeah, I write books in my free time. And if you're friends with me and you didn't know this, sorry, I don't tell people ever. So it's not that you didn't get the memo or you weren't in on the joke, I just don't really talk about it. And so I wrote that book long time ago. And thankfully my writing has developed a lot since then. I'm a much better writer. But since then I've also written 3 full manuscripts and 3 partially completed manuscripts. I'll give you a sneak peek actually. Okay, so here is some stuff. Woohoo! This is what I'm working on right now, basically. That's what I'm currently writing and trying to complete. And I will be coming out with a book, I think hopefully this year. I don't know, editing is hard because I'm like just so busy with college and stuff, so. Anyways, I'm gonna break this up into just some categories that I think you should think about if you are trying to write a book. Obviously this isn't for every single genre of writing, like I write very specific genre, and so I can only kind of attest to that, which is like fiction, fantasy, magical realism, dystopia, that sort of stuff. The first thing that you need to do if you want to write a book is you need an idea, obviously. But even though it sounds simple, this is like pretty much the hardest part, in my opinion, one of the hardest parts. Because I'm not gonna lie, pretty much everything's already been done at this point. There isn't that much new or unique content, but you know, it's your job kind of to put a different spin on it, and kind of your own creative flair. So coming up with an idea is not easy, trust me, I know. My advice would be, I just think a lot about the world, I guess, and I question things a lot and think about what if things were different. That kind of sets me on a path of like getting an idea. I think what if? That's like a huge theme in how I write and how I like make plot points and stuff. I think what if this was different? What if this was different? What would we do if this happened, you know? So, and you know, ideas can come from seriously like anywhere. I've had ideas from like dreams, and the book that I'm about to publish later this year, I got that idea from watching another movie. I obviously didn't like copy that movie or take the plot, but that movie got me thinking about like human existence and like a lot of really meta stuff. And from there, it kind of just like I tumbled down this like pattern of thinking, and I had an idea. So I might make something more in-depth on this because it's a little abstract and hard to put into words. Once you have an idea to write your book, you need to, see, this is hard because some people do this differently. This is basically just what I do from my experience and what has worked best for me. I know some people like to write a whole outline and have a whole plan. I don't really like that, and I'll explain why, hopefully briefly. If you have an outline, you know, that's very regimented, and I feel like if I wrote an outline, I would stick to it thoroughly, and that wouldn't let me grow as the book grew, if that makes sense. So, for example, a lot of my ideas, I don't know what's going to happen next necessarily when I'm writing, And that's great because it leaves it open, and it forces me to think like about the possibilities of what could happen. And from there, I am able to develop something that wouldn't have occurred otherwise if I had, like, from the beginning just written a huge outline. So for me personally, I think it's better to, keep your mind open. But if it's more comfortable for you to write an outline, then by all means go for it. But I'd still recommend you have to keep an open mind for changes that could happen. Because you don't necessarily know how the direction of the book is going to go. At least I don't, personally. I don't know what's going to happen in the end, but that has really worked for me. So when you start writing, you have your idea, you obviously need a setting, and all of these, and like characters, and these things really need to be like taken into account more than you think, because your whole book, your whole story could change if it was like in 2020 or if it took place in like 1850, and maybe the 1850 book would have a really cool spin on it, depending on what it is. And you need to be able to establish the characters. So character growth and character development is something that I've had to learn a lot about, because there have been times when I didn't do a great job of developing characters, but I think I know it more now, having written for a long time. So it's kind of something that you need to be on your own journey with, but I will say, like, the worst thing when I read a book, I hate it so much, is when you have shallow characters that you don't care about or you just don't relate to. Or they just don't, like, make you feel something. Please give your characters something interesting about them, whether that be a backstory or, I don't know. There's so many elements to people that you need to think about how it would affect their decision making and how it would affect the plot going forward. So please, as you develop your characters, obviously it can come later, but it's a little difficult to, suddenly randomly add a character trait to a character that you've already written about 100 pages for. Like, you should try to think about these things in the beginning or as when you first start writing. So I feel like when a lot of people think about writing a book or something, it's super scary because they're like, well, how the heck am I supposed to write 300 or 400 or 500 pages? Yeah, that's definitely valid. It certainly takes a long time. Usually it'll take me like 2 years to write a book. So keep that in mind, that it's not an easy or necessarily fast process, but it's definitely doable. If you think about it like this, if you write 1 page a day, just 1 page, you could finish like a decent sized book in a year. So that's pretty cool, right? Obviously, like, I don't recommend you just writing 1 page a day. You should write when you feel and write when you're moved to write. I thought I was more validated if I wrote longer books. That's not necessarily true, because if you think about it, like, who wants to read an 800-page book? Few people would read an 800-page book as opposed to like a 300-page book, and that is unfortunately something that I've had to learn. And it's not embarrassing or anything if you read a 200-page book. Like, that's still pretty freaking cool. So try not to worry about the page number too much. I would instead recommend, instead of like figuring out what page you're on or like how many more pages you should write, just focus on the plot more than the actual pages or how many chapters you have or something. Focus on the plot and the characters. For me, nowadays, when I write, I kind of know what my end goal is going to be when I finish the book. I know generally like what is going to happen. And I know there are steps that have to be taken to get there. So rather than like thinking, oh, I need to write 300 more pages for this to be a good book or a long enough book, I think about what plot points should happen. Like, when I feel satisfied with the amount of interesting plot points or interesting antics or plot twists that I have, then I will be satisfied with, the length of the book, whatever it may be. And of course, as long as it all wraps up together. So that's what I would say. Focus more on developing great plot points and enough great plot points, and developing your characters rather than focusing on how many pages you've written. I don't want to speak too much on endings of books. I don't know, I feel like I don't have enough to say about it right now. But I will say, don't be afraid to kill characters off if it's that kind of book. Try not to get too attached to them, because I think a good death of a character is always right there. So definitely that. Try to surprise the audience if you can. Yeah, surprise the audience. Doesn't always necessarily have to be a happy ending, in my opinion. I'm a big fan of like really switching it up, you know? And I mean, once you're finished writing or like you have an idea of an ending, it's just like getting there, right? Like for me, I generally know the beginning of a book, like how it's gonna happen, and then the end, and I just have to fill in what goes in the middle, and that's easiest for me to learn how to write, and it's easiest for me to develop a story like that, because I have to like figure out how am I gonna take points to get to that ending. So it's helpful for me to know the ending of a book in the beginning-ish, and if not, that's okay too. I've definitely had moments where I have just developed it as I go along, which again is just as good. So yeah, I think that's all I'm going to touch on for endings. I don't want to talk about editing your book right now because that's a whole other topic separate from actually writing it, but I will preface it with this, like your first draft, it might be crap. I'll just say it, there are going to be things that you're going to want to change, especially if you're a new writer. The only reason that like I'm more developed as a writer and I'm more comfortable with my writing is because I've written so many crap stories, and I've just learned from it. So it's totally okay, especially if you're new at writing books and writing in general, to be not writing great first drafts. I feel like I've had the advantage of kind of getting ahead in that because I've been writing for like 10 years-ish, is how long I've been writing stories and books. So, you know, I've had the time to develop and be able to push myself further. But, you know, for new writers, you might not like it at first, and it's okay to scrap it. If you're not in love with your book, I should have said this earlier, oh my gosh, but if you're not in love with the idea that you have for your book, do not push it. Do not try to force an idea that you don't love. And if you don't end up loving a book, that's okay. Like, this series, I was originally gonna make this 5-book series, but I eventually, like, I grew up and I developed as a writer, and I realized that I don't want to continue with this right now. I don't love it enough, and I'm not going to, you know, push an idea or push a book that I know I'm not going to love, because A, you're going to torture yourself, you're not going to enjoy the process, and it's a long process, and B, it's just not going to be good work if you're not into it or you're not passionate about it. Yeah. So the final thing that I will say that is pretty much a prerequisite for wanting to be a writer is that you really need to read. It should be going without being. It should be. What's the expression? It's like it should be said without. Bruh, you should already know this. You need to read if you want to be a writer. A lot of writers have said it, and I definitely agree. And especially, you need to read the genre that you plan on writing. Be critical as a reader. I know, like, in school you had to like do critical thinking when you read like frickin' Shakespeare or the classics and stuff. But if you're reading something that you enjoy, which hopefully you are reading what you enjoy, definitely, you know, be critical about the book. Think about what makes it a good book and what are elements that you think might not make it a good book. And of course, I might elaborate later and go more in depth on each of these points in different videos, because I could talk about this for freaking hours. Thank you for watching it up until here. If you're actually interested in this, then praise be. And if you're just watching this out of obligation because you're my friend, then thanks. Yeah. I mean, honestly, if you guys ever have questions about writing or my books or anything, or you want me to edit something for you, hit me up, slide into my DMs, because I'm always interested in that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's all for now, and thank you.